Section 2. Research Aptitude. NTA NET JRF Lecture. By Dr. Anjani Kumar. Research. Meaning of research. First, we should start from the word research. This word is made up by adding re as a prefix to the word search. Search is to make known of an existent unknown thing. Therefore, research, search of searched, means to elicit some facts out of a known thing. Research is an essential as well as a powerful tool leading towards progress. The curious nature of man prompts him to uncover the mysteries of nature. He tried his best to make those mysteries into notice. He establishes some truths of these mysteries by applying his cause and effect method. This is the way of research. The arrival of modern era has brought some superior developments in all aspects of human life. Consequently, the methods and meaning of research has also taken a different shape than it was before. We can summarize the modern meaning of research in following points. Research is an attitude of inquiry, an attempt to elicit facts, a systematic and scholarly application of the scientific method, essentially a state of mind, a friendly, welcoming attitude towards change. Characteristics of research. 1. It is a scientific investigation. Research means to search again. It connotes patient study and scientific investigation. 2. It develops concepts and the theories. One reason for conducting research is to develop and evaluate concepts and the theories. 3. It expands the limits of knowledge. Basic or pure research attempts to expand the limits of knowledge. It is conducted to verify the acceptability of a given theory or to know more about a certain concept. 4. It cannot be implemented immediately. It does not directly involve the solution to a particular problem, its findings generally cannot be implemented immediately. 5. It is an essential tool for good decision making. The task of educational research is to make the information used in decision making more accurate. Educational research is a managerial tool that provides information essential for good decision making. Research in teaching, training, organizing, or management areas of an institution is within the scope of training research. Educational research reduces the risk of making wrong decisions. It is an aid to management judgment, not a substitute for it. Aims and objectives of research. To discover answers to questions through the application of scientific procedures, its main aim is to find out the truth which is hidden and which has not been discovered as yet. Though each research study has its own specific purpose, we may think of research objectives as falling into a number of following broad groupings. 1. To gain familiarity with a phenomenon or to achieve new insights into it. Exploratory or formulative research studies. 2. To portray accurately the characteristics of a particular individual, situation or a group. Descriptive research studies. 3. To determine the frequency with which something occurs or with which it is associated with something else. Diagnostic research studies. 4. To test a hypothesis of a causal relationship between variables, hypothesis testing research studies. Types of research. Classification I. A general classification differentiates research in three categories. A. Fundamental, also called pure or basic, research. A research, which makes persistent and patient efforts to discover something new to enrich the human knowledge in a fundamental fashion, is known as fundamental research. This research helps in developing theories by discovering broad generalization and principles. It is organized through different procedures of research like sampling, hypothesizing facts, etc. It can be experimented in a laboratory. Thus, in a larger perspective, it is discovery and the development of an organized body of scientific knowledge. Fundamental research can take shape in two different ways. Discovery of a new theory. Fundamental research may be entirely new discovery, the knowledge of which has not existed so far. Galileo's or Newton's contributions are fundamental in character as these depended upon their own imagination and scholarship. A. Development of the existing theory. Since theory is always based on assumptions, there often exists enormous scope for altering or formulating new set of assumptions and adding new dimensions to the existing theory. There also exist the possibilities of reinterpretation of the theory that has already been developed. B. Applied research. Fundamental research sets principles and applied research utilizes those principles to know the problems with best possible manner. This type of research is based on the application of known theories and models to the actual operational fields or populations. The applied research is conducted to test the empirical content or the basic assumptions or the very validity of a theory under given conditions. An applied research contributes, 1. By providing the kind of convincing evidence of the usefulness of the theory. 2. By utilizing and developing techniques which can also be made to serve so-called basic research. And 3. By providing data and ideas which may speed up the process of generalization. Applied research often takes the form of a field investigation and aims at collecting the basic data for verifying the applicability of existing theories and models in given situation. C. Action research. It is a research through launching of a direct action with the objective of obtaining workable solutions to the given problems. Action research is spread over different phases such as a baseline survey, where all the possible information of research interest is collected to enable the researcher to acquaint himself with the existing or operational situations. This also aims at collecting information from other sources that have direct or indirect bearing on the research program. At the second phase, the planned action is practically launched, and then at the next phase action research carries out periodical assessment of the project. At a subsequent stage, changes, modifications and other improvements are made in the functional aspect of the project, and finally the whole process culminates in the evaluation of the project as a whole. The methods used for this type of research are usually personal interviews method and the survey method. Classification 2. A comparative classification differentiates research in various pairs according to the form and objectives of research. 1. Descriptive vs. Analytical. The fact-finding inquiries and the field surveys are main contents of descriptive research. The major purpose of descriptive research is description of the state of affairs as it exists at present. In social science and business research we quite often use the term ex post facto research for descriptive research studies. The main characteristic of this method is that the researcher has no control over the variables. He can only report what has happened or what is happening. Most ex post facto research projects are used for descriptive studies in which the researcher seeks to measure such items as, for example, frequency of shopping, preferences of people, or similar data. Ex post facto studies also include attempts by researchers to discover causes even when they cannot control the variables. The methods of research utilized in descriptive research are survey methods of all kinds, including comparative and correlational methods. In analytical research, on the other hand, the researcher has to use facts or information already available, and analyze these to make a critical evaluation of the material. 2. Applied vs. Fundamental. Applied and fundamental are the two phases of research. Applied research aims at finding a solution for an immediate problem facing a society or an industrial, business organization, whereas fundamental research is mainly concerned with generalizations and with the formulation of a theory. Research concerning some natural phenomenon or relating to pure mathematics are examples of fundamental research. Similarly, research studies concerning human behavior carried on with a view to make generalizations about human behavior are also examples of fundamental research, but research aimed at certain conclusions, say, a solution facing a concrete social or business problem is an example of applied research. Research to identify social, economic or political trends that may affect a particular institution, or the copy research to find out whether certain communications will be read and understood, or the marketing research or evaluation research are examples of applied research. Thus, the central aim of applied research is to discover a solution for some pressing practical problem, whereas basic research is directed towards finding information that has a broad base of application and thus, adds to the already existing organized body of scientific knowledge. 3. Quantitative vs. qualitative. Measurement of quantity is followed by quantitative research. It is applicable to phenomena that can be expressed in terms of quantity. Qualitative research, on the other hand, is concerned with qualitative phenomenon, i.e., phenomena relating to or involving quality or kind. For instance, when we are interested in investigating the reasons for human behavior, i.e., why people think or do certain things, we quite often talk of motivation research, an important type of qualitative research. This type of research aims at discovering the underlying motives and desires, using in-depth interviews for the purpose. Other techniques of such research are word association tests, sentence completion tests, story completion tests and similar other projective techniques. Attitude or opinion research, i.e., research designed to find out how people feel or what they think about a particular subject or institution, is also qualitative research. Qualitative research is especially important in the behavioral sciences, where the aim is to discover the underlying motives of human behavior. 4. Conceptual vs. empirical. The research, which is based on some ideas on theory, is known as conceptual research. It is generally used by philosophers and thinkers to develop new concepts or to reinterpret existing ones. On the other hand, empirical research relies on experience or observation alone, often without due regard for system and theory. It is data-based research, coming up with conclusions which are capable of being verified by observation or experiment. We can also call it as experimental type of research. In such a research, it is necessary to get at facts firsthand, at their source, and actively to go about doing certain things to stimulate the production of desired information. I. Ex post facto research. E. Field investigation research. V. Evaluation research. N. E. Laboratory or experimental research. IV. Survey research. V. Action research. Classification 3. The present view of categorizing research is somewhat different. The research these days is categorized as I. Ex post facto research. Ex post facto research is systematic empirical inquiry based on a scientific and analytical examination of dependent and independent variables. Independent variables are studied in retrospect for seeking possible and plausible relations and the likely effects that the changes in independent variables produce on a single or a set of dependent variables. In ex post research, the researcher's control on the behavior of independent variables is very weak, and in many cases no control is possible. Ex post facto research, therefore, has to take things as these are and examine separately or wholly their impact on the explained variables. E. Laboratory or experimental research. By definition, research of this type is confined to laboratory experiments alone. The basic feature of such research is that there exists a possibility of exercising control over independent variables and isolating their influences for plausible explanations. A laboratory experiment is a research study in which the variance of all or nearly all of the possible influential independent variables not pertinent to the immediate problem of the investigation is kept at a minimum. Laboratory experiments usually help to discover relations under pure and contaminated conditions. These are also treated as testifiable from known theories and models and are also held as competent to refine or modify the existing theories and related hypotheses. For these purposes, experimental research is most often carried out in the field of physical sciences. Social sciences theories and models can be verified, refined and redesigned only when field situations are taken into account. E. Field investigation research. A field experiment is a research study in a realistic situation in which one or more independent variables are manipulated by the experimenter under as carefully controlled conditions as the situation will permit. Where the laboratory experiment has a maximum of control, most field studies must operate with less control factor that is often a severe handicap to the experiment. The weaknesses of field experiment, therefore, are of practical nature. The control cannot be held as very tight. The investigator himself works under several influences and may at times be faced with unpleasant situations, and the independent variables may get significantly affected by uncontrolled environmental influences. Field experimental studies are an important part of the applied research which, at times, play an important role in pointing out the nature and direction of the refinements required for an existing doctrine. A practical difficulty in this research is randomization of units in the given population. Unless the field of operation has been selected in an objective and scientific manner, the investigations may not proceed on the lines desired by the researcher. IV. Survey research. Survey research is approached through the methods of personal interviews, mailed questionnaires and personal discussions besides indirect oral investigation. These days this type of research is held to be significant in making valuable contribution to social sciences research methodology. It has directly helped in the improvement of the sampling procedures and their applicability to real-world situations besides also suggesting improvements in resolving the complex situations to unambiguous experimentation with a view to obtain research findings. Survey research necessitates a well-designed research program in which objectives are properly framed and the program of activities is scientifically planned till the final research report is prepared. This type of research has the advantage of greater scope in the sense that a larger volume of information can be controlled from a very large population. Survey research, no doubt, is more expensive, but the amount and quality of information that is collected makes such investigation very economical. This information is also accurate, of course, within the range of sampling errors because trained and technically knowledgeable personnel are employed for the job. V. Evaluation research. Evaluation research is a product of developmental programming. This type of research is primarily directed to evaluate the performance of the developmental projects and other economic programs that have already been implemented, the objective being to realistically assess the impact of any such programs. The evaluation is carried out with respect to the broader changes and major objectives of a program. The evaluation research is of three types, mainly, 1. Concurrent evaluation, 2. Phasic or periodic evaluation, and 3. Terminal evaluation. V. Action research has been already discussed. There are many other kinds of research which are variations of one or more of the above stated approaches, based on either the purpose of research, or the time required to accomplish research, or the environment in which research is done, or on the basis or some other similar factor. From the point of view of time, we can think of research either as one-time research or longitudinal research. In the former case the research is confined to a single time period, whereas in the latter case the research is carried on over several time periods. Research can as well be understood as clinical or diagnostic research. Such research follow case study methods or in-depth approaches to reach the basic causal relations. Such studies usually go deep into the causes of things or events that interest us, using very small samples and very deep probing data gathering devices. The research may be exploratory or it may be formalized. The objective of exploratory research is the development of hypotheses rather than their testing, whereas formalized research studies are those with substantial structure and with specific hypotheses to be tested. Historical research is that which utilizes historical sources like documents, remains, etc. to study events or ideas of the past, including the philosophy or persons and groups at any remote point of time. Research can also be classified as problem-oriented research. A researcher is free to pick up a problem, redesign the inquiry as he proceeds and is prepared to conceptualize as he wishes. Decision-oriented research is always for the need of a decision maker, and the researcher in this case is not free to embark upon research according to his own inclination. Operations research. It is an example of decision-oriented research since it is a scientific method of providing executive departments with a quantitative basis for decisions regarding operations under their control. Research requirements. Planning. The project taken for study should clearly mention its definition and classification of purpose and scope of operation. It should follow the investigation to reveal conditions affecting the achievement of purposes. There should be an analysis to determine the meaning of facts. Any planned scheme brings a good result at its conclusion. Guidance. Guidance cannot be separated from the general life of a research project. It helps the researcher to concentrate on the problems. Guidance is concerned with the selection of the problems. Experts. Research works require experts. Expert means he who is experienced in certain area. He should have thorough knowledge of research. He should be able to guide properly and formulate a well-planned project for work. Training. In research work, trained teachers or researchers work up to their maximum satisfaction. They know how to organize, how to plan and how to implement the project for its completion. Teacher training and training for students leads to maximize educational output. Finance. Education is one of the most important enterprises of a nation. It is concerned with the whole population. So new problems taken for study require financial help from the state for its better progress. References. For any research project, references should be followed. It has a great impact in the mind of the researcher. He gathers knowledge of techniques and related observations. This helps him in making a well-planned project for work. A preliminary work done will provide some experiences to a new researcher who will be interested to work more on that particular area. Library. As we all know, library is the treasure of knowledge. It provides large number of materials through books of which quality, quantity and variety are endless. So the researcher should know the ways of writing all these materials in the right ways. Research journals. These days researchers have been made in all fields of life. Any problem coming in economical, social and educational fields of life are taken for its deep study to find out its solution in the national as well as international field. Steps of research. The various steps involved in a research process are not mutually exclusive. Nor they are separate and distinct. They do not necessarily follow each other in any specific order, and the researcher has to be constantly anticipating at each step in the research process the requirements of the subsequent steps. However, the following order concerning various steps provides a useful procedural guideline regarding the research process. 1. Formulating the research problem. 2. Extensive literature survey. 3. Developing the hypothesis. 4. Preparing the research design. 5. Determining sample design. 6. Collecting the data. 7. Execution of the project. 8. Analysis of data. 9. Hypothesis testing. 10. Generalizations and interpretation. And 11. Preparation of the report for presentation of the results, i.e., formal write-up of conclusions reached. 1. Formulating the research problem. There may be two basic natures of research problems, i.e., it may be related either to states of nature or to the relationships between variables. At the very outset, the researcher must single out the problem he wants to study, i.e., he must decide the general aura of interest or aspect of a subject matter that he would like to inquire into. Initially, the problem may be stated in a broad general way, and then the ambiguities, if any, relating to the problem be resolved. Then, the feasibility of a particular solution has to be considered before a working formulation of the problem can be set up. The formulation of a general topic into a specific research problem, thus, constitutes the first step in a scientific inquiry. Essentially, two steps are involved in formulating the research problem, viz., understanding the problem thoroughly, and rephrasing the same into meaningful terms from an analytical point of view. The best way of understanding the problem is to discuss it with one's own colleagues or with those having some expertise in the matter. Figure: research process in flowchart. The researcher must at the same time examine all available literature to get himself acquainted with the selected problem. He may review two types of literature: the conceptual literature concerning the concepts and theories, and the empirical literature consisting of studies made earlier which are similar to the one proposed. The basic outcome of this review will be the knowledge as to what data and other materials are available for operational purposes, which will enable the researcher to specify his own research problem in a meaningful context. After this, the researcher rephrases the problem into analytical or operational terms, i.e., to put the problem in as specific terms as possible. This task of formulating, or defining, a research problem is a step of greatest importance in the entire research process. The problem to be investigated must be defined unambiguously, for that will help discriminating relevant data from irrelevant ones. Care must, however, be taken to verify the objectivity and validity of the background facts concerning the problem. Formulation of the problem often follows a sequential pattern where a number of formulations are set up, each formulation more specific than the preceding one, each one phrased in more analytical terms, and each more realistic in terms of the available data and resources. 2. Extensive literature survey. Once the problem is formulated, a brief summary of it should be written down. It is compulsory for a research worker writing a thesis for a PhD degree to write a synopsis of the topic and submit it to the necessary committee or the research board for approval. At this juncture, the researcher should undertake extensive literature survey connected with problem. For this purpose, the abstracting and indexing journals and published or unpublished bibliographies are the first place to go to. Academic journals, conference proceedings, government reports, books, etc., must be tapped depending on the nature of the problem. In this process, it should be remembered that one source will lead to another. The earlier studies, if any, which are similar to the study in hand should be carefully studied. A good library will be a great help to the researcher at this stage. 3. Development of working hypotheses. Working hypothesis is tentative assumption made in order to draw out and test its logical or empirical consequences. After extensive literature survey, researcher should state in clear terms the working hypothesis or hypothesis. As such, the manner in which research hypotheses are developed is particularly important since they provide the focal point for research. They also affect the manner in which tests must be conducted in the analysis of data. Following approaches describe the development of working hypothesis: a. Discussions with colleagues and experts about the problem, its origin and the objectives in seeking a solution. B. Examination of data and records, if available, concerning the problem for possible trends, peculiarities and other clues. C. Review of similar studies in the area or of the studies on similar problems. D. Exploratory personal investigation, which involves original field interviews on a limited scale with interested parties and individuals with a view to secure greater insight into the practical aspects of the problem. 4. Preparing the research design. There are several research designs, such as experimental and non-experimental hypothesis testing. Experimental designs can be either informal designs or formal designs, out of which the researcher must select one for his own project. The preparation of the research design, appropriate for a particular research problem, involves usually the consideration of the following: I. The means of obtaining the information. E. The availability and skills of the researcher and his staff, if any. E. Explanation of the way in which selected means of obtaining information will be organized and the reasoning leading to the selection. IV. The time available for research. V. The cost factor relating to research, i.e., the finance available for the purpose. 5. Determining sample design. The items selected constitute what is technically called a sample. The researcher must decide the way of selecting a sample, or what is popularly known as the sample design. In other words, a sample design is a definite plan determined before any data are actually collected for obtaining a sample from a given population. Thus, the plan to select 12 among a city's 200 drug stores in a certain way constitutes a sample design. Samples can be either probability samples or non-probability samples. With probability samples, each element has a known probability of being included in the sample, but the non-probability samples do not allow the researcher to determine this probability. Probability samples are those based on simple random sampling, systematic sampling, stratified sampling, cluster, area sampling, whereas non-probability samples are those based on consensus sampling, judgment sampling and quota sampling techniques. A brief mention of the important sample designs is described below. I. Deliberate sampling. This sampling method involves purposive or deliberate selection of particular units of the universe for constituting a sample which represents the universe. Therefore, this is also known as purposive or non-probability sampling. When population elements are selected for inclusion in the sample based on the case of access, it can be called convenience sampling. If a researcher wishes to secure data from, say, gasoline buyers, he may select a fixed number of petrol stations and may conduct interviews at these stations. This would be an example of convenience sample of gasoline buyers. At times such a procedure may give very biased results, particularly when the population is not homogeneous. On the other hand, in judgment sampling, the researcher's judgment is used for selecting items which he considers as representative of the population. For example, a judgment sample of college students might be taken to secure reactions to a new method of teaching. Judgment sampling is used quite frequently in qualitative research where the desire is to develop hypotheses rather than to generalize to larger populations. E. Simple random sampling. In this sampling, each and every item in the population has an equal chance of inclusion in the sample, and each one of the possible samples, in case of finite universe, has the same probability of being selected. It is also called proportionate sampling. It is suitable in more homogeneous and comparatively larger groups. For example, if we have to select a sample of 300 items from a universe of 15,000 items, then we can put the names or numbers of all the 15,000 items on slips of paper and conduct a lottery method. Using the random number tables, Tippett's numbers, is another method of random sampling. To select the sample, each item is assigned a number from 1 to 15,000. Then, 305-digit random numbers are selected from the table. To do this, we select some random starting point and then a systematic pattern is used in proceeding through the table. We might start in the fourth row, second column and proceed down the column to the bottom of the table and then move to the top of the next column to the right. When a number exceeds the limit of the numbers in the frame, in our case over 15,000, it is simply passed over and the next number selected that does fall within the relevant range. Since the numbers were placed in the table in a completely random fashion, the resulting sample is random. This procedure gives each item an equal probability of being selected. E. Systematic sampling. In some instances, the most practical way of sampling is to select every 15th name on a list, every 10th house on one side of a street, and so on. Sampling of this type is known as systematic sampling. An element of randomness is usually introduced into this kind of sampling by using random numbers to pick up the unit with which to start. This procedure is useful when sampling frame is available in the form of a list. In such a design, the selection process starts by picking some random point in the list and then every north element is selected until the desired number is secured. IV. Stratified sampling. If the population from which a sample is to be drawn does not constitute a homogeneous group, then stratified sampling technique is applied so as to obtain a representative sample. In this technique, the population is stratified into a number of non-overlapping subpopulations or strata and sample items are selected from each stratum. If the items selected from each stratum is based on simple random sampling, the entire procedure, first stratification and then simple random sampling, is known as stratified random sampling. V. Quota sampling. In stratified sampling, the cost of taking random samples from individual strata is often so expensive that interviewers are simply given quota to be filled from different strata, the actual selection of items for sample being left to the interviewer's judgment. This is called quota sampling. The size of the quota for each stratum is generally proportionate to the size of that stratum in the population. Quota sampling is thus an important form of non-probability sampling. Quota samples generally happen to be judgment samples rather than random samples. V. Cluster sampling and area sampling. Cluster sampling involves grouping the population and then selecting the groups or the clusters rather than individual elements for inclusion in the sample. Suppose some departmental store wishes to sample its cardholders. It has issued its cards to 15,000 customers. The sample size is to be kept say 450. For cluster sampling, the list of 15,000 cardholders could be formed into 100 clusters of 150 cardholders each. 3 clusters might then be selected for the sample randomly. The sample size must often be larger than the simple random sample to ensure the same level of accuracy because in cluster sampling, procedural potential for order bias and other sources of error is usually accentuated. The clustering approach can, however, make the sampling procedure relatively easier and increase the efficiency of field work, especially in the case of personal interviews. Area sampling is quite close to cluster sampling and is often talked about when the total geographical area of interest happens to be big one. Under area sampling we first divide the total area into a number of smaller non-overlapping areas, generally called geographical clusters, then a number of these smaller areas are randomly selected, and all units in these small areas are included in the sample. Area sampling is specially helpful where we do not have the list of the population concerned. It also makes the field interviewing more efficient since interviewer can do many interviews at each location. Multi-stage sampling. This is a further development of the idea of cluster sampling. This technique is meant for big inquiries extending to a considerably large geographical area like an entire country. Under multi-stage sampling, the first stage may be to select large primary sampling units such as states, then districts, then towns and finally certain families within towns. If the technique of random sampling is applied at all stages, the sampling procedure is described as multi-stage random sampling. Sequential sampling. This is somewhat a complex sample design where the ultimate size of the sample is not fixed in advance but is determined according to mathematical decisions on the basis of information yielded as survey progresses. This design is usually adopted under acceptance sampling plan in the context of statistical quality control. 6. Collecting the data. In dealing with any real-life problem, it is often found that data at hand are inadequate and hence it becomes necessary to collect data that are appropriate. There are several ways of collecting the appropriate data which differ considerably in context of money costs, time and other resources at the disposal of the researcher. Primary data can be collected either through experiment or through survey. If the researcher conducts an experiment, he observes some quantitative measurements, or the data, with the help of which he examines the truth contained in his hypothesis. But in the case of survey, data can be collected by any one or more of the following ways. Through personal interviews, IV, by mailing of questionnaires, I, by observation, through telephone interviews, V, through schedules. 7. Execution of the project. Execution of the project on the correct lines is necessary to collect adequate and dependable data. The researcher should see that the project is executed in a systematic manner and in time. If the survey is to be conducted by means of structured questionnaires, data can be readily machine processed. In such a situation, questions as well as the possible answers may be coded. If the data are to be collected through interviewers, arrangements should be made for proper selection and training of the interviewer. The training may be given with the help of instruction manuals which explain clearly the job of the interviewers at each step. Occasional field checks should be made to ensure that the interviewers are doing their assigned job sincerely and efficiently. A careful watch should be kept for unlucky path factors in order to keep the survey as much realistic as possible. This, in other words, means that steps should be taken to ensure that the survey is under statistical control so that the collected information is in accordance with the predefined standard of accuracy. If some of the respondents do not cooperate, some suitable methods should be designed to tackle this problem. One method of dealing with the non-response problem is to make a list of the non-respondents and take a small subsample of them, and then with the help of experts vigorous efforts can be made for securing response. 8. Analysis of data. After collection of data, next step is to analyze it. The analysis of data requires a number of closely related operations such as establishment of categories, the application of these categories to raw data through coding, tabulation and then drawing statistical inferences. The unwieldy data should necessarily be condensed into a few manageable groups and tables for further analysis. Thus, researchers should classify the raw data into some purposeful and usable categories. Coding operation is usually done at the stage through which the categories of data are transformed into symbols that may be tabulated and counted. Editing is the procedure that improves the quality of the data for coding. With coding, the stage is ready for tabulation. Tabulation is a part of the technical procedure wherein the classified data are put in the form of tables. The mechanical devices can be made use of at this juncture. A great deal of data, especially in large inquiries, is tabulated by computers. After tabulation, we proceed for analysis work, which is based on the computation of various percentages, coefficients, etc., by applying various well-defined statistical formulae. 9. Hypothesis testing. If there is any hypothesis, the next step is to test it. Various tests, such as chi-square test, t-test, f-test, have been developed by statisticians for the purpose. The hypothesis may be tested through the use of one or more of such tests, depending upon the nature and object of research inquiry. Hypothesis testing will result in either accepting the hypothesis or in rejecting it. If the researcher had no hypotheses to start with, generalizations established on the basis of data may be stated as hypotheses to be tested by subsequent researchers in times to come. 10. Generalization and interpretation. If a hypothesis is tested and upheld several times, it may be possible for the researcher to arrive at generalization, i.e., to build a theory. As a matter of fact, the real value of research lies in its ability to arrive at certain generalizations. If the researcher had no hypothesis to start with, he might seek to explain his findings on the basis of some theory. It is known as interpretation. The process of interpretation may quite often trigger off new questions, which in turn may lead to further researches. 11. Preparation of the report or the thesis. Finally, the researcher has to prepare the report of what has been done by him. Writing of report must be done with great care, keeping in view the following. 1. The layout of the report should be as follows: I. The preliminary pages, E. The main text, and E. The end matter. In its preliminary pages, the report should carry title and date followed by acknowledgements and foreword. Then there should be a table of contents followed by a list of tables and list of graphs and charts, if any, given in the report. The main text of the report should have the following parts. A. Introduction. It should contain a clear statement of the objective of the research and an explanation of the methodology adopted in accomplishing the research. The scope of the study along with various limitations should as well be stated in this part. B. Summary of findings. After introduction, there would appear a statement of findings and recommendations in non-technical language. If the findings are extensive, they should be summarized. C. Main report. The main body of the report should be presented in logical sequence and broken down into readily identifiable sections. A. Conclusion. Towards the end of the main text, researcher should again put down the results of his research clearly and precisely. In fact, it is the final summing up. At the end of the report, appendices should be enlisted in respect of all technical data. Bibliography, i.e., list of books, journals, reports, etc., consulted, should also be given in the end. Index should also be given specially in a published research report. 2. Report should be written in a concise and objective style in simple language, avoiding vague expressions such as "it seems," "there may be," and the like. 3. Charts and illustrations in the main report should be used only if they present the information more clearly and forcibly. 4. Calculated confidence limits must be mentioned, and the various constraints experienced in conducting research operations may as well be stated. Methods of research. The aim of science is to provide new and useful information in the form of verifiable data, obtained under conditions such that other qualified people can make similar observations and obtain the same results. This task calls for orderliness and precision in uncovering relationships and in communicating them to others. A. Experimental method. The experimental method is a matter of logic, not of location. Even so, most experimentation takes place in special laboratories, chiefly because the control of conditions commonly requires special equipment that is best housed and used in one place. The laboratory is generally located in a university or a research institute of some kind, where it is accessible to scientists who work on a variety of topics. 1. Laboratory. The distinguishing characteristic of a laboratory is that it is a place where the experimenter can carefully control conditions and take measurements in order to discover orderly relationships among variables. A variable is something that can occur with different values. For example, in an experiment seeking to discover the relationship between learning ability and age, both learning ability and age can have different values, learning being either slow or fast and the learner being either young or old. To the extent that learning ability changes systematically with increasing age, we can discover an orderly relationship between them. 2. Variables. The ability to exercise practice control over variables distinguishes the experimental method from other methods of observation. If the experimenter seeks to discover whether learning ability depends on the amount of sleep a person has had, he can control the amount of sleep by arranging to have several groups of subjects spend the night in the laboratory. One group might be allowed to go sleep at 11 p.m., another at 1 a.m., and the third group might be kept awake until 4 a.m. By waking all the subjects at the same time and giving each the same learning task, the experimenter can determine whether the subjects with more sleep master the task more quickly than those with less sleep. In this study, the different amounts of sleep are the antecedent conditions, the learning performances are the results of these conditions. We call the antecedent condition the independent variable because it is independent of what the subject does. The variable affected by changes in the antecedent conditions is called the dependent variable. In psychological research, the dependent variable is usually some measure of the subject's behavior. The phrase, is a function of, is used to express the dependency of one variable on another. Thus, for the experiment above, we could say the subject's ability to master a task is a function of the amount of sleep he has had. From the point of view of science, the existence of a correlation between two variables can be very useful. This is so because when a correlation exists, it is possible to predict one variable from information about one or more other variables. The ability to make such predictions is one important goal of science. Correlations range from -1.00 to +1.00, and the more they depart from zero, the stronger the correlation. Positive correlations indicate that as one variable increases, the other increases too. Negative correlation indicates that as one variable increases, the other decreases. This is correlational method. 3. Degree of control. The degree of control possible in the laboratory makes a laboratory experiment the preferred scientific method when it can be used appropriately. Precision instruments are usually necessary in order to control stimuli and to obtain exact data. The experimenter may need to produce colors of known wavelengths in vision studies, or sounds of known frequency in audition studies. It may be necessary to expose a pattern in an aperture of a viewing screen for a fraction of a second. With precision instruments, time can be measured in thousandths of a second, and physiological activity can be studied by means of very slight electrical currents amplified from the brain. Thus, the psychological laboratory has audiometers, photometers, oscilloscopes, electronic timers, electroencephalographs, and computers. 4. Value of an experiment. The value of an experiment is not determined, however, by the amount of apparatus used. If the logic of experimentation requires precision apparatus, then such apparatus should be used. If does not, good experimentation can be carried out with pencil and paper procedures. B. Observational method. Careful observation of animal and human behavior, including the study of our own conscious processes, is the starting point of psychology. Observation of chimpanzees in their native environment of Africa may tell us things about their social organization that will help us conduct our laboratory investigations. Study of proliferate tribes reveals the ranges of variation in human institutions, which would go unrecognized if we confined our study to men and women of our own culture. Motion pictures of newborn babies reveal the details of movement patterns shortly after birth and the types of stimuli to which babies are responsive. In making observations of naturally occurring behavior, anecdotes may be substituted for genuine observations, or interpretations for descriptions. We may be tempted, for example, to say that an animal known to have been without food is looking for food, when all we have observed is heightened activity. Investigators must be trained to observe and record accurately in order to avoid projecting their own wishes or biases into what they report. C. Survey method, field studies. Those problems which are difficult to study by direct observation may be studied through the use of questionnaires or interviews. Surveys have been used to obtain information on political opinions, consumer preferences, healthcare needs, and many other topics. The census and exit polls are probably the most familiar surveys. An adequate survey requires a carefully pre-tested questionnaire, a group of interviewers trained in its use, a sample carefully selected to ensure that the respondents are representative of the population to be studied, and appropriate methods of data analysis and reporting so that the results are properly interpreted. The data can be collected in a number of ways like personal interview, mail questionnaire, panel technique and telephone survey. Personal interview. A direct conversation between the interviewer and the respondent is held with a view to elicit some information from the latter. There are 3 necessary conditions for a successful personal interview. Accessibility, that is, the information required be such that the respondent be able to convey it to the interviewer. Cognition, by which is meant the understanding on the part of the respondent of what is required of him and what types of information are required. Motivation of the respondent. The respondent must be motivated to give accurate answers because a distorted answer is no better than no answer at all. There are many sources of interviewers' errors, particularly their personal bias and influence, which tend to lower the reliability and the validity of the survey. Mail questionnaire. This method is commonly used in educational and sociological researches. As its name implies, the questionnaire consisting of several items designed to elicit the required information is prepared and mailed to the respondent with the request to return it after answering all the items. Through the use of mail questionnaires, a widely scattered population can be surveyed rapidly and with less expenditure. A mail questionnaire easily avoids many problems associated with the use of the interviewers. The main problem is the non-response from the respondent. Panel technique. In this, the re-interview design is used and the same sample is interviewed more than once. The panel technique has 2 advantages. First, the panel technique enables the investigator to know how the various factors bring changes through time in the attitudes of the sample being studied. Second, when the same sample is interviewed twice, or more than twice, it becomes a more sensitive and an accurate measure of change than when 2 different samples from the same population are tested. The panel techniques has, however, 2 important limitations. First, in the panel survey, a loss of the sample being studied may occur. The loss may occur due to any of the 3 factors, namely, death, refusal to be re-interviewed, and moving from one place to another. Second, re-interviewing sometimes lends to sensitize the sample to the extent that the individuals refuse to give the desired response and may act as if they are no longer representatives of the population to which they belong. Telephone survey. It is a rare form of survey research. In this survey, the responder is interviewed by the investigator on telephone. This type of survey has the advantage of being quick and speedy in collecting information about the respondents. But the technique has several disadvantages. When the respondents do not know the investigator, they usually do not cooperate and answer only simple and straightforward questions. D. Case studies. Case studies, also known as case reports, are analyses of persons, events, decisions, periods, projects, policies, institutions, or other systems that are studied holistically by one or more methods. The case study is common in social sciences and life sciences. Rather than using samples and following a strict set of rules to examine limited number of variables, case study methods involve an in-depth, longitudinal examination of a single instance or event, a case. They provide a systematic way of looking at events, collecting data, analyzing information, and reporting the results.